In just 3 years, Isaac Mertens has built Flux Footwear into a mid-8-figure monster, running a 15 to 20% bottom line margin. That is a lot of profit for a brand growing really, really fast. And that's because Isaac's doing a lot of things really right. He's entirely self-funded, no external capital. And we talk in this episode all about how he got there. This is the second episode of my Profit Monsters series, talking with operators like Isaac, who have built 8-figure plus businesses and who have done it profitably and can break down exactly how they got there and what you can learn from it. So in this episode, we're talking about negotiating terms with your suppliers. We're talking about offshoring talent. We're talking about really knowing your numbers and building a creative flywheel and really understanding deeply how meta ads work so you can use it to your advantage and not just letting other people do it for you. So you're going to like this conversation a lot. Let's get into it with Isaac Mertens from Flux Footwear. Isaac Mertens, Flux Footwear. Thank you so much for taking time to being on this podcast. Profit Monsters, I think this will be episode 2 of this series. And just the first one was awesome. And I think this is going to be a great conversation too, because you just have a monster of a business happening at Flux Footwear. I was telling you, I was aware of your brand before we were talking because my wife was looking into buying some Flux shoes. And then like we got like a post-pilot card like the day we started talking from you guys. So it was fortuitous timing because I'd already been poking around the brand alongside her a little bit. It is awesome, beautiful, beautiful brand. Like everything looks great. Tell people a little bit about Flux, how it was founded, what you guys do, and maybe give them just like the quick timeline of sort of how you got to where you are now, which, as I said in the intro, mid-8 figures, running at a 15 to 20% bottom line margin.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Andrew. Good to be here. Excited to be chatting. So Flux Footwear really started 7 years ago. We entered, we call it our false start 5 years ago, right in the heart of COVID. And then really I've been able to kind of be operating full force for just about 3 years after just a lot of ebb and flowing of in stock, out of stock, as I'm sure a lot of listeners have experienced during the heart of COVID. But really the idea was, how do we design and develop a brand and product that inspired natural movement, that got more people introduced into this idea and concept of barefoot shoes. Most shoes have an elevated heel, which then correspondingly misaligns the entire body because we're supposed to be in a natural state and posture, as well as most shoes have narrower toe boxes. Ours have a wider toe box that allows your feet to splay, which again allows for proper coordination, posture, also helps with bunions, and then also naturally strengthening your feet. Another aspect that makes our shoes really, really unique, typically in the barefoot shoe space, it's like really thin shoes. Of course, we live in a world of concrete, and we're walking on that, and that's not what our joints and bodies are designed for. So we do have more cushion than normal, but what makes our shoes special is we have textured insoles. We have 100 individual nodes in our insoles that gives the same proprioception as if you were barefoot. And what's special about that is when you're barefoot, your nerve endings are sending messages to your brain. Like if oftentimes when you twist your ankle or turn your ankle, it's because you have a muted response. I like to use the analogy of earmuffs. Yes, you can hear things, but it's really muted. And that's the exact same thing that's happening with your feet to the ground with super thick sole shoes. And like we solve that problem of cushion while still getting all the benefits of the proprioception of our textured insole. A lot of people say they feel like massaging it, like a little massage on your feet, which is kind of our secret sauce. And then they just look really nice. That's kind of another complaint, that they felt weird. They felt different, banana, or they looked like clown shoes, right? Or the toe shoes that just weren't super common, or people didn't like to see wear them in public. So that's kind of like the problem we were solving with Flux, and saw just enormous growth with our runner once we launched that in 2020, and really allowed and that growth and then product market fit for the space.
You had tailwinds there, right? Because you just mentioned two things that I think of as like as important in this, which is the wide toe box, which I hear more and more about all the time, and the barefoot shoe sort of style in general. Did you launch knowing, like, I know both of those have been sort of trending up. I don't want to use the word trend in a negative way. I just mean like there's sort of more awareness of those two ideas in shoes. Did you launch with like some sense that was the movement of product? Because this immediately gets into something that I think is actionable, which is just TAM. Like, one of the reasons shoe brands work is because everybody wears shoes. And so if you can capture some subset of that, this is why there's a million blank t-shirt brands, and why there's some of them are very big. This is why there's, a million activewear brands, right? Because everybody right now, I'm wearing a Legends shirt that was sent to me by the fine people at Legends, and just like this, everybody wears that stuff all the time. So yeah, did you purposefully launch into the tailwinds of those of that sort of sub niche of footwear, or was that just like you were already passionate about it and that was that? Like, I guess what I'm asking is, like, how much was that a calculated business decision versus how much was that your beliefs about shoes decision?
Yep. So some additional context. I have no background in footwear. I am not like a shoe guru or sneakerhead at all. Truly, like, really, in essence, like a businessman. So again, we can kind of go down the rabbit hole as deep as you want, but it wasn't, like, I didn't go on Google Trends and is wide toe box trending. Frankly, 5 years ago, it was not. But you're absolutely correct. It has been quite a surprise, actually, in my opinion, of the acceptance of wide toe box. Like, no one would ever say that phrase. Like, no one knew what that was. And now I'm just hearing it more commonplace. What the bet was I was noticing, this is like Whoop, the HRV monitor, and then
the one I have right here. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Like, that was getting really big. AG1 was more than just athletic. Like, it was getting into culture, and kind of mommy bloggers were talking about it. And that was the bet that I was taking, was this holistic wellness movement. And I had other different ideas of what we wanted to potentially capture, this like idea of moving people into a more holistic, natural way, apparel brand, like a fitness app, or also like similar to what Whoop was doing, but it was a little bit more personalized. And then, I saw this space of in the footwear, none of the barefoot shoes I was like willing to wear outside of like my home gym. There's got to be a problem. So that was the bet I was wanting to take, of just, I saw this going in a certain way. Before this, I started a furniture company. It was the Industrial Pipe and Wood on Etsy. And again, I just saw that was probably about 10 years ago now. That, again, I saw in like restaurants, and just was really cool, but didn't see it in just homes. And I'm like, hey, let's build this. And it just took off. Again, now it isn't so popular anymore, but yeah, so trends can definitely, be a positive or a negative, but like, for me, I felt like the holistic, doing it right and actually solving the problem in a long term. I don't want to get too, one-sided, but just, I think there's a lot of frustration on kind of the pharmaceutical side of just like drugs that are not actually solving the problem. A lot of people, and for me, that's a bit of my story too, is I've had some health concerns and just was not finding solutions to those with antibiotics, and then went to a little bit more holistic, natural path, and was able to find remission. So similar, I just like, that's where I think it's moving. So, yep. And then
I just pulled it up while we're talking here. So I've just pulled up the Google Trends for wide toe box and barefoot shoes. And it's funny, the barefoot shoes, there's an earlier spike in 2011 that was
Vibram. Those were the toe shoes.
Yes, I remember those.
That's when that popped off. Yep.
Yeah, I remember that moment, but it's interesting to see wide toe box.
Yeah, so we started it in like the valley, actually.
Yeah. But it's a good picture, I think. I think Google Trends charts like this are like a really sort of sneaky business metric. Like people don't think about it enough because there's one way of looking at all this stuff, which is that as long as you have a reasonable margin, TAM is like the whole ball game. Like it just makes all, if you want to talk about like building a mid-8-figure business as fast as you guys did it, it's just the case. And I think for a lot of founders, they don't really realize that like opportunity selection and product development are just like, they're just like before you ever talk about an ad strategy, your P&L strategy, anything else, like it's just a really, really, really big deal. And, it goes really far. So, again, whether or not you were fully trying to ride this wave or whatever, it's a really important part of it. Within that, though, it does require good management. And you guys have put up, like I said, like really monster profit numbers while growing very fast. I mean, you got to mid-8 figures in a few years, basically. Right? You said 2021 you started. We're just early.
So we basically went from 3 million to 14 million. 46.
And then on up from there. Yeah. And so you did that really fast, and to do that at the profit level that you're doing it at is crazy. I mean, it's really impressive. So I want to break that down a little bit. What if you could sort of centrally talk about one core part of what you are great at as a leader and what you think has like driven your approach to being able to get the business there? Do you think there's any central thing besides TAM, which we just talked about a little bit? Like what, like, is there something in the way that you're actually managing the growth that you think is like most crucial to you?
Yeah. I actually have a degree in accounting. I went going to be an accountant, did not realize that, in my opinion, I think that is fundamentally the most important thing outside of being a DIY media buyer and self-taught media buyer. It's the numbers. I don't know. It sounds silly, but I have this joke in my own head. It's, you don't have a business unless you have a penny in your bank account. Once it goes to zero, you no longer have a business anymore. And it sounds funny and silly, but like, I don't feel like that's the reality that we were living in, frankly, in DTC era 1 or 2. Like, it was VC funded. Like, you had money in the account because people gave it to you, not because the business was generating a positive return. And so, yeah, I mean, as an accountant, like, it's black and white. There's it's like, what's the numbers say? And for me, that's solely how we operated from day one, completely bootstrapped, no fundraising from outside capital or anything like that. So like, we had to be profitable from day one, or like have the game plan of, hey, like, this has to generate returns. We don't have, any outside and we didn't want to, just, we wanted to have full control of like our growth story and our growth track. So that's
have you
my
funded
big thing.
Have you funded any of your, I want to come back to that point in a second, but just out of curiosity, that level of growth, have you funded inventory scaling with debt?
Zero.
No, that's incredible. So, okay.
Excuse me, let me correct it. At the very beginning, we got an SBA loan, but we paid that off within the first 10 months. But like from like the hyper growth and scale the last 2 years, we haven't. Payment terms have been a really big part of that, but in just proper cash flow management and margins. But yeah, we haven't.
All right. So let's dig in here. Because I think this is a really important part of the story. It's funny. My first episode I did was with Ben Perkins from And Callers in this series. Ben has the opposite story. He was stacking MCA loans on each other, got into a lot of trouble, survived it all, and is now running a really profitable, good, earlier 8-figure business. And so he's got a lot of learning from that I think was extremely helpful. But you have done the opposite here, which I think is a really helpful thing. And which is to fund your growth internally. So you just said something really important at the beginning, which is essentially like, this whole thing is a giant numbers game, right? All of this is just a big math problem to solve in a lot of ways, right? This, of course, it's oversimplified, but there's real truth to that basic idea. And then you immediately started talking about being able to finance like 3x growth a couple times, in a couple of years, to where you're getting to the mid-8 figures. Now, part of it is you're running very profitably, so it makes it easier to finance your growth when you're actually that profitable. But that doesn't solve the whole thing. Like, you still have to turn around and put that profit back into inventory growth if you're trying to grow that fast. But as you are doing that, And part of that, I assume, is also that you've got some probably loyal customers in footwear. People are probably coming back and buying. It means your ad spend as a percentage of revenue, I bet, is pretty decent. You haven't told me that, but it's my guess, just in the way that apparel businesses and footwear businesses work. But let's talk a little bit about sort of the way that you have managed that. So you talked about something right away, which was let's talk about the contribution margin side of things first, okay? And then I actually want to talk about the actual cash management side. So you say like knowing your numbers is really crucial. The way I would think about the problem of knowing your numbers in a growing D2C business is through the lens of contribution margin. So how do you guys think about contribution margin? Maybe just define it for people really fast. Just really quick version of it is fine. I'll just say my definition. You tell me if it's the same one for you, okay? Because people have different ideas here. My definition is revenue minus all cost of delivery, basically every variable cost associated with getting the product to the customer minus ad spend associated with that, right? So how much money do you have left over where the only costs left in your business are fixed costs like software, people, buildings, anything like that stuff. So yeah, that's the way I'm thinking about it. I don't know if you think about it that way. Clarify that. And then, okay, great. And then tell me how you guys think about CM in the business.
Yeah. So for us, I think it's important to mention, because people talk a lot about this contribution margin percentage. And for us, our North Star is 30%, our 30% contribution margin goal. And then also a consideration that's important is what's your total contribution margin dollar? Like what is the total figure of contribution margin at the end of the month? Because yes, maybe you operate at a 40% contribution margin, or we end at a 40%, but that total dollar amount is, let's just say, in a worst case, smaller than what your people costs are, your software costs, like what you need to run like the inside of the business, then that's not a win. That percentage needs to adjust based off the total. And I think that's also a really important consideration in terms of just like growth and scale. Funny enough, we are recording this a day after the tariff announcement that is just shaking the e-com world, and like us, it's a very big consideration. We're directly impacted. And right now we're playing around with the idea of like, do we raise prices or do we take the hits? And with just the consumer that's really holding onto their dollars tightly, yes, we could maintain proper margins and increase our costs, but then we could cut our revenue in half, and then that contribution dollar total would just be, again, slashed in half. It wouldn't be a sustainable number. Or do we eat the costs? And yes, our contribution margin percentage takes a hit, but are we able to counteract that with, if other people are increasing prices, but we're staying the same? So I think a good like tangible exercise of contribution margin as a percentage is a North Star, but the total dollar at the end of the month is also like an extremely important consideration of growth.
Yeah.
And
the percentage can be deceiving, is what you're saying, right? Like,
I want to be clear, for us, 30% is, it sounds like, oh, you should just know that. It's taken like 2 years, and frankly, it's a number that is constantly. It's like a science and an art thing. Like, depending on where your business is, different inputs, like that number can go up and down. But it's taken 2 years to really massage and find like that nice middle ground of anything higher than 30%. Like we're leaving dollars on the table. Anything lower, like we're missing out on the EBITDA number, and EBITDA is the value.
Makes it too hard to grow, and then you're right.
Yeah.
This episode of the show and the entire Profit Monster series really is brought to you by my friends at INTELLIGEMS. If you're trying to grow your business profitably, if you're an operator thinking that way, INTELLIGEMS should be part of your software stack, as it is for most of the clients that I work with. And I really mean that. That's 100% honest. I work with a small group of clients, and 3 out of the 4 of them are using INTELLIGEMS to do on-site CRO testing. And there's a really simple reason for that, which is that on top of how easy INTELLIGEMS is to get set up quickly and make work quickly, and how much you can do all the normal CRO, A/B testing type stuff you can do with this kind of software, the sort of Google optimized stuff you've been able to do for a long time, INTELLIGEMS allows you to test more deeply with more important results than other software. And what I mean by that is, if you want to test your price, which is a major lever for generating profitability, you can do that. You can actually split test your your pricing of various products with INTELLIGEMS. You can live split test offers, like if you're doing a site-wide 10% off for new visitors, or stacked discount or free shipping threshold, any of those kinds of things. Test it with INTELLIGEMS. Those are the kinds of decisions that operators make sort of thoughtlessly all the time that have a monster impact on profit. And the beauty is INTELLIGEMS will tie into all of your Shopify product data, like your COGS and all that. That way, you can actually measure the outcome of all of your tests, not just on conversion rate or revenue per session, but on profit per visit. That's the golden metric for INTELLIGEMS. It's really easy, like I said, to get it set up and get started. And on top of that, you can get 20% off your first 3 months working with INTELLIGEMS today. I think for most operators growing businesses, INTELLIGEMS should be part of their tech stack. They should be testing stuff like this pretty much all the time because it is a major way to squeeze out profit. One of my clients recently changed his site-wide offer. When he changed his site-wide offer, he did it not just by changing the offer, but by split testing it with INTELLIGEMS first and got 8% more profit per visit. That's like a really, really big number. So you should be considering it too. INTELLIGEMS.io, get 20% off your first 3 months with the code FARIS20. That's FARIS 20. Go check it out today. Yeah, especially if you're trying to self-fund your growth. That makes sense. And you're thinking of that CM specifically on new customer acquisition, right?
No, just like total.
No, across the business.
Across the business.
Can you talk? Okay, can you talk about that inference that I made a minute ago about sort of like new versus returning customer revenue? Because when you talk about scaling as fast as you have, one of the things I'm curious about is sort of how much of that revenue is new versus returning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a really interesting dynamic. So I would say not until about 10 months ago, and let's just give context, like within the first 3 years, within the first 3 year span. So, first 2 years, our returning customer rate was sub 10%. Like it was difficult. I mean, again, with footwear, it's, a 6 month, typically a year for the most people wear it out, 6 to 12 months. Now, again, we have enough of we have hundreds of thousands of customers. So now it's like a meaningful amount. So we are taking that into consideration. Now, what's really interesting is at the beginning, we were kind of living and dying by our AMER, the new customer efficiency, because like that was the growth, and like because we couldn't rely at all really on making up any efficiency with that returning. However, now like we've been able to balance that where it's almost a 50-50 split for us.
Of new and returning customer revenue.
Yes, new customer. See,
because that's really interesting in your business, because I would think that the specific value proposition of a wide toe box barefoot runner shoe would be the kind of, it's not just like, oh, I think these shoes are cool and I like the brand. There's actually a sort of like health consideration there to where once I find one of those that fits, I'm going to be pretty loyal to that, because I can't just go buy a pair of Nikes that I think are cool if they're going to like hurt my feet, So yeah.
Yeah. I wish that was the case. But really like footwear's definitely a fashion no matter what. And
no question.
We're a little unique. Like,
but if you're 50-50 on new and returning customer revenue, you've grown that much, then you've clearly got some super customers who are loyal.
Oh, we do. Yes.
Love.
Yes. Yeah. For sure. We do.
But it sounds like what the challenge was in the early stages. You're growing a whole bunch, so you're piling up a bunch of new customer revenue. Those people don't come back for 6 months or a year because of the life cycle of shoes, and so it takes a while for you to start realizing all the profitability that's going to come from those returning customers, right? Am I restating that correctly? Yeah. And I'll attack onto that. It's frankly come at the perfect time too, because during that first 2 years, again, there was just a lot of green grass for us, and we were scooping up those at a very efficient margins and efficiency. However, now it's switched. Like it's very difficult just in the landscape, and I think regardless of size and scale, like it's harder to acquire new customers in just the current landscape and meta and all the variety of issues and challenges. So that's just, it's kind of been a really nice counterbalance for us where we were able to find a really efficient new customer. Now it's a little bit more difficult, and we're able to make up a lot of that lost efficiency of new customer with the increased efficiency of returning. And we've kind of settled in now of like,
finding and expecting the returning customers to come back. But like, that's always the terrifying thing. And why I don't ever recommend, like, as we're starting to see, what's, your 180 a day LTV or 60 day, it just, I never recommend, a younger, smaller brand to ever think through, expecting them to come back.
Yeah, you definitely can't bank on it until it happens. So let's actually talk about the inventory financing issue, because I think this is a really important thing. So you've stayed away from debt, which is a cost that you've kept off your books while also growing. It is almost as if one of the reasons that you guys are so profitable is that you've kept that as a constraint. And by keeping that as a constraint, that you're not going to finance with debt, it forces you into behaviors of handling different things profitably, right? So by doing that, one of the things you have to do, right, is first of all, you have to run at a high margin. Secondly, you have to then also go negotiate with vendors and get deals that make sense for you. So talk to me about that a little bit. How you mentioned right away that payment terms with manufacturers, where are you guys at with that today versus maybe where you started, and how did you get there?
Yeah, I think this is a really important topic. I think a lot of times, especially on podcasts that I've heard, it's like, oh yeah, just negotiate your terms, like get better terms. Like, I'm sorry to burst the bubble, and maybe other people have different situations. It took us 5 years. Like, it's not an overnight thing.
Why did it take you 5 years? I have a guess, but tell me. Right.
Yeah,
you have to build credit, right? Essentially, relational
exactly.
and actual credit. Yeah, right.
Yes, exactly. And again, we're in the footwear space, and it's a little more involved than I think potentially other industries. Like, you have very expensive mold costs. So what's really unique is you have very, very little developmental costs. Like, the factory will be sampling and developing product for free. Like, they don't charge you to develop the product, but you have, $50,000 in mold costs for the product. So like, there is like investment up front within footwear, but then there's high like staying power for the factory. So like, they're willing to invest in you, and it is, it's continuing to pay on time. It's continuing to order, hitting forecasts. Again, we kind of have like, quote unquote, easy mode in some sense. Like, we continue to grow and hit projections and like following through with increasing order volumes. I don't know what that looks like if we wouldn't continue to order more or continue to miss forecasts. I think that's a different conversation. But what's equally interesting is we were with smaller manufacturers, and we became like a massive client. So obviously then you have a little bit more pull. A year ago, we just moved to the second largest manufacturer in the world, actually, and now we're the small guy. So we kind of had to start from zero in terms of our terms of payment. And to give some context, like,
so wait, why did you do that? Why did you? What did that get you?
One, quality, and then the second was just like pure quantity. We were outgrowing them. Like, their factory just was not enough. So those are the two considerations. I'm not going to name names, but like, the big brands are being manufactured by our manufacturer. So again, footwear's, I'm sure, different or maybe the same as a lot of industries, but there are a ton of massive players in the game. So you kind of like, that's the pinnacle, and you stay. And then also costing, they have more sway, so they're able to get their supply, their materials cheaper, and then we are able to get cost savings as well.
And you were able to do that at the same terms you had when you were the big fish in the small pond?
No. Yeah. So we had to start over. So for some expectation settings, it was brutal. At the start, 50% deposit, and then the final payment was due before the boat even left. So like, that
was like day one,
all up front. That was day one. Yep. So that was really tough. Yep. I mean, again, and this is during COVID. Yep. So now you can get a boat in 30 days. I mean, it was taking 60, 90 days, and we have hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we were able to get to 20% up front to place the PO, and then final payment 90 days afterwards. And from my understanding, that's
90 days after what?
Good. After X Factory. So after the boat leaves.
This episode is brought to you by my friends at More Staffing. More Staffing is my chosen partner for offshoring e-commerce talent. I have been working with More Staffing both as not only a podcast sponsor, but in my business for the last year and a half or something like that. I was in the Philippines in January. I've come to know these people well. And what I can tell you is the combination of deep e-commerce resumes and expertise. They were actually formed out of a US-based e-commerce business. Greg Carey's Section 119, where a team of Filipino employees was doing incredible work for them, and they got together and said, how do we bring this to others? Not just $5 an hour virtual assistants, but how do we bring high-level talent, like actually Isaac and I talk about in this episode, high-level talent doing really high-quality work to US-based businesses at a price that they can actually afford so they can grow and scale profitably. Look, if you are serious about growing a profitable e-commerce business, I just don't know why you wouldn't considering offshoring talent. And the beauty of More Staffing is they're a reliable staffing partner to get you access to the best talent in the Philippines across every part of your business so that you can do that there. I cannot recommend them highly enough. I really love working with them in my business. At this point, pretty much everything I touch in some way touches somebody in the Philippines, which in some way touches More Staffing. And so you should be working with More Staffing. They're just really fantastic. They'll even give you a 1-year guarantee on any hire they make. So if that hire doesn't work out, they'll help you replace them for free within a year, which is a really awesome guarantee. It's way longer than most staffing agencies give you. And on top of that, they'll hire across any part of the organization. That's supply chain, customer service, operations, marketing, just anywhere you can think of. They've got access to great talent. They will get to you. Again, go up market. Don't just think about the $5 an hour virtual assistant. Think about better manager and up-level positions. More Staffing will get you access to them. Morestaffing.co/AF. Morestaffing.co/AF. Just get on a call. See if it's right for you. Look at some resumes and see what's possible. I think it's probably going to be way bigger and better than what you think. Oh man. Okay. So that means that by the time it's delivered, you've got the inventory for 60 days. And yeah. So that's it's going to be really easy for people to miss how important that is
yes,
a 20% down payment is not that big of a deal, even if you're growing and getting all of the rest of it on net 90 terms, let's call it net 60 from when the boat gets, unloads your stuff. Right. That's a really, really big deal for how you guys have been able to grow without debt. Okay. And so where are you guys at now? Can I ask?
Right now, again, we were able to build enormous trust. We're talking spending millions of dollars with this manufacturer. And after a year, how did we start? I think we were similar. We were 50% up front and then 50% due before the boat left. And then now we got to 30% up front and then final payment 30 days X Factory. So really, really helpful. And to be clear, Andrew, you're nailing it. This is absolutely essential and critical. I know that there's other inventory payment companies out there that can delay terms or 60, 90 days. Top of mind, I can't think of them. But even at our size and scale, that 50% up front and 50% before factory was not sustainable for us. It was really, really felt. So again, and what's tough is it's not a flip of a switch, but it truly is a massive unlock because even at we're talking millions of dollars and really healthy cash flow. It still was really tough on us with those terms. Yeah. And once we unlocked the current ones.
Yeah. There's two ways you can handle that as a brand, right? One of those is to generate debt and to look at that. And that is sort of, so far as I can tell, the Ben Perkins story that he told in the last one, which is that he starts doing that because he's growing and it's going well. And he's acquiring customers profitably and all, and all that stuff, but it's just doing it within margin, trying to keep growing. Well, and it was challenging. And again, I think the constraint factor is a really big deal. The idea that you in your earlier stages had to be that much more profitable in your customer acquisition because you just had to, you needed the cash to do it. I just think that creates great habits for a brand to have to kind of live with that are going to be valuable in other ways, yeah, it's certainly not the other way to do it. Some people, but I think the real mistake for people is to try to grow and then to start taking on debt products that they don't really understand, because that's the challenge, that you have to be pretty sophisticated to financially to be able to work through sort of all of the implications of your approach to debt and the downstream effects of it and all that in a way that, like, for me, like, I'm starting a brand right now, and it's a little thing on the side, and I'm just not very interested in funding it with debt, because I just know that there's details with that are going to be too challenging for me to work through with so much, especially in the early stage of a business that are just gonna be so uncertain. And what I really like about what you're saying is, you've got this time lag to the returning customer revenue, which is going to be the most profitable sort of tranche of your revenue. All of these things force you into behaviors that are really going to lead towards building a profitable business. And what happens is that when you get that right and you've got a really good quality product, the tailwinds of the TAM hit. Now you've also got the operational side of things to where, the whole machine can really pump, and you can get to the stage that you guys are at where you're growing plenty fast, very healthy margins. And even like you were telling me before we hit record, even with your guys' net margin, still you're not putting a lot of money in your pocket yet, because if you're going to keep growing, you've just got to turn that around to keep financing inventory growth and all those things. So it's I think a really good case study in sort of how to think about this. And I could go on and on about why I think people sort of resist that path and why people want to grow faster and all that stuff, but I'll skip that for now to keep staying a little bit more tactical, because I think this gets into the existential a little bit. But I do want to talk about levers of impact a little bit, as you guys have sort of carried that out. So on top of the financing and all that, let's talk about sort of what you think have been the real big needle movers in you guys growing. I don't know if you want to start on the ad side or on the COG side or anything else, but what else do you see sort of as you kind of get past the sort of basic financial management into the real specific levers now, about sort of what has led to your guys' growth? I'd love to hear about it.
Sure. Before we jump on, I just
sure, please.
I wanted to wrap that up because I said know your numbers, but I loved what you said about discipline. I think profitable growth isn't sexy. It's about the discipline. And you helped me kind of realize that as we were talking on how impactful the terms are, like little things like that, frankly, like is why. And also last point is additionally, sure, you can have those extended terms, but that comes at a cost. And then that comes at eating margin. And it's a downstream effect, that sure it's delayed, but it comes at a cost. And then you have to acquire customers at an even more efficient number. So is there really that much more benefit? So anyways, like the discipline and it's not sexy. And again, numbers aren't sexy. Like being an accountant isn't sexy, but like, gosh dang it, they're important. So moving on to your question.
Absolutely.
About the levers. It's definitely evolved and changed for us. We went all in on Meta about 2 years ago when I think a lot of people were trying to diversify. It was when, a little after iOS 14 and even during iOS 14, Meta isn't working. We got to find other channels. And that was my bread and butter. And we just went hard on that. We developed an in-house, I call it creative flywheel, and just got exceptionally good at knowing how to create one, quality, and two, quantity of creative that just continue to feed Meta.
So let's not move past that. Let's stay there for a second. So you were a media buyer at CTC,
yes.
Right? So that's good. So you got training. You used the language disciple of Taylor Holiday earlier before we hit press record. So that's awesome. That definitely puts you at an advantage, and I think it's a really big deal. And is one of the reasons I tell people all the time, including I will do an ad read for it on maybe on this episode, certainly on future episodes about admission and why I think people should go join that program and just inhale it. It is just inhale the content, because if you can somehow get that way of thinking, it is the largest or second largest line item on your business. It is the key to your growth for a lot of brands. You've got to get great there, and don't let anybody try to short circuit that. But I want to talk about your creative flywheel, because this is something everybody's talking about right now. The introduction of AI ads have been another part of this. Tell me what you can operationally about your creative of Flywheel and what you guys have done there, maybe earlier when you kind of got the flywheel going, and then what it looks like today. I would love to just like break that down so people understand what's your team look like. How do you measure the performance? I mean, not how you measure the performance. How do you measure the outputs of the team? Like, just talk us through that. There's just no way I'm going to get through this episode without making a plug for my friends at Admission. Admission, as Isaac mentioned in this episode, is the place to get the learning and the knowledge that you need to run your ad account with excellence. It is too important to your business to not do that. You need to know what's going on with your Meta Ads account, be able to handle things yourself, get the knowledge you need to manage that spend efficiently, manage your agency efficiently, whether you're doing it in-house or managing an agency. You should be joining Admission, and you should inhale the content, like I said in this episode with Isaac. It's just really valuable to know what's going on in your Meta Ads account and to be able to think about and connect that to everything else going on in a profitable e-commerce business. More recently, the most popular courses in Admission, which is what Admission is, it's a bunch of courses put together with access also to see Common Thread Collective's incredible media buying and growth strategy talent mixed in together. Admission, most popular courses recently have been Incrementality 101, the e-commerce pyramid of success, meta optimization best practices, how to set monthly revenue targets, maximizing video ad volume. There's just like all kinds of stuff. Recently, they dropped a course called When Do I Drop Off a Campaign, or When Do I Turn Off a Campaign? Like very clear tactical stuff like that. My recommendation is that you join Admission, soak up the material, do everything you can to learn it well, and then use that to develop real perspective and point of view on how to manage your meta ad spend as well as possible. On top of that, if you sign up with my link, what you will actually get is not only all of the courses that I just mentioned and a whole bunch more, and a monthly webinar with Taylor Holiday that's exclusive, private to Admission members, but you also get access to CTC's media buying team, where you can get coaching calls. So they will actually look at your ad account with you. You can get those coaching calls for $150 an hour going forward once you've joined Admission, but you actually get the first one for free if you sign up through my link, or if you sign up for a year of Admission, you get 4 of them for free. So go join Admission, youradmission.co. Tell them I sent you, and you'll get that free call. Just let them know I sent you, or follow the link in the description, which will take you to my landing page. So you get that free coaching call. You're going to want that. You're going to use it. It's really awesome. Join Admission. Get better at meta ads, make more money.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it definitely has changed. It's appropriate timing. Literally this week, I had a conversation with the team of like, hey, this is how we're revamping it to unified flywheel. We called it the creative flywheel, and we're moving it to the unified flywheel. And I'll explain those. So like really the idea around the creative flywheel, again, at my time at CTC, the biggest issue was lack of creative. My hands are tied and they're expecting returns, and they just keep giving me the exact same 5 pieces of content, maybe in a different colored background, or whatever that is. And yeah, like your hands are tied to just continuing to give Meta the exact same piece of content. So really it was designed for me. In-house was like the biggest aspect of just understanding the feedback loop and what was working. And again, I had background and expertise in it versus kind of outsourcing it. But yeah, it was really about like seeding product and getting content in that capacity for mashups, finding UGC creators. And that was actually like a really big piece for me. I mean, I would stay up late at night and just kind of go down rabbit holes of finding UGC creators, and then signing them and having them join us for like long-term contracts if they worked. So like that was a really big lever that allowed it to.
Let's pause there really fast again. I want to drill in just a little. So when you say creator versus seeding, are you thinking of creator and influencer? Seeding versus creator is 2 different things?
Yes. Yeah. 2 different things. So yeah, this would just be like, we're just seeding product to, like someone that we think fits our demographic with sometimes
a
with
runner,
expectation.
A serious runner. And so you're sending it to them.
Yeah.
Right. Great.
Yeah. Just
and are you, when you're doing when you're doing that, are you asking them for anything, or is it just sort of the kinship style, send it out, sort of palms down? Like, yeah.
Yeah. That's so sorry. I was talking about two different things at 2 years ago when we first started. There like this was just to get content
Yes.
One for like
Okay.
awareness in their own audience, and then two, like, hey, if it was something we could use, that was like a 10%. Like the majority of this was like we'd write scripts to a creator and then like literally outline shot for shot, word for word to create it. However, moving into this more unified flywheel, I'm calling it, it's we're adjusting that. It's very much we're seeding, yes, for like no expectations. But we're now developing internal systems to literally capture. I mean, we're receiving about 500 to 600 pieces of content a month. Again, for clarity, that has taken years to build up to. So
Yeah.
don't just expect that to happen overnight.
But this is why I'm stopping you and asking the specific questions, because yes. I know exactly what you mean. Which there are so many solved problems between day one starting this and 500 pieces of creative per month. Yes. So I was like, okay, let's talk about those. What are the problems that got solved? Because again, it's one of those. It's like you said about people hearing the advice, just go negotiate your terms. Well, that's great, but like, what did you have to do to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I'm trying to get specific. So you're doing a 10% seeding influencers, and then other creators, you were literally just writing them scripts, which is sort of different than what's and paying them. Okay,
and paying them.
Do you want to talk about how much budget relative to your ad spend? How much budget were you paying them?
Yeah, it was silly. It was nothing. I mean, it was maybe 4,000 a month, or like, I mean, we're talking less than 1%. Like we're really fortunate. I think we got, like, again, the background expertise that I kind of had and knew came into big play. So it's kind of like that unfair advantage. But like agencies, I mean, like they're expensive. Like that's why we didn't do that. So also, yeah, I don't want to just give like, hey, just go and do this. This is how it works. Like we definitely have an unfair advantage in that way. Probably it should have cost us like 20 to 30 grand. Which would have been a pretty meaningfully impactful expense for us. But yeah, it was hard. Like that was my dream of like seeding product, getting gobs of content, and then like mashing that into paid ads for paid media. But yeah, it took the team, it took us buying into it. Yeah, it was hard to be able to get us to a place of like, how do we get a system put in place to just seed, and frankly, it's all not that good. Like I think you're very much taking the lottery approach in that way, because the lighting sucks. Like, like the UGC creator is like, that's their job. Like they're great at that. Versus just someone not even knowing where it's going to live. So it's a lottery approach, but I'll share this. This is very important. Within that seeding program, there was this campaign that ditch your big brand. I won't say the names, but it was ditch your big shoe brand, and we ran that campaign because I couldn't get that out of my head of just like, I loved how they phrased, I ditched my XYZ brand for Flux. And it wasn't that ad that I ran that, I mean, this is multi-million dollars in revenue that we ran these ads for like 6 months to 10 months around this concept and idea, that just from like seeding product and hearing what they have to say and how they're using it, impacted and influenced our ad creative and strategy. So yeah, I think while yes, might not have gobs of creative at the start, you can be getting really insightful ideas and just like that tagline, ditch your XYZ brand.
It's actually kind of brand positioning. Like what I hear in that answer is a little bit of like, you got really clear about the kind of thing you wanted people to think about the shoe relative to everything else, and really trying to draw a hard distinction.
Yeah, by listening to them, customers. So yeah, that was good. So yeah, do you mind, like, is that helpful? Do you want to move into kind of like where we're at?
Yeah. I just I do want to hear more about. So how is the team set up now, and what does the flywheel look like now?
Yep. So we have our VP of brand, Kayla. Again, like I can't state highly enough like how impactful she has been in like really just again, she's actually an ex-CTCer herself. She started as a creative strategist and has elevated herself to our VP of brand and like really helped build this. We have an in-house creative strategist, 2 editors, and then I have a position that I haven't really heard or seen of that I am stoked about. We're gonna hopefully hire this person at the end of the week. It's a UGC coordinator, and what this person is gonna do is be solely responsible for. We use Archive. Basically, if you tag at Flux Footwear on your story, Instagram, TikTok, like anywhere, we're able to have a library of it. So what her job is going to be doing is to be looking at every single piece of content that there is, whether it's from like a paid influencer, a seeded partner, and then like capturing that and then sending into her editors, creative strategists, creating like concepts of an unboxing or 3 reasons why. And this person is just going to be the maestro of just organizing all of these pieces of content to then be able to have our team find them. And then we're also using an agency that's supplementing UGC creators, like scripted UGC.
It's so interesting because that's the kind of thing that somebody would want to give to AI now because they'd be like, that's not important. But what I hear again in that answer is this is the lifeblood of the business. And so like we're going to put somebody, great UGC is gold for us. It is a money printer. So we're going to dedicate resources to doing it. I'm just curious, as you have built those teams, is it all US based? Is it offshore? How are you guys doing that?
Yeah, we're actually, most of the team is offshore.
Awesome.
I love that. There are employees, but yeah, they're offshore.
That makes perfect sense to me. And that might be a good place for us to jump into. There's more we can say about ads, and I just want to be conscious of that, that there's other stuff too. Is there anything on the OpEx side of the business and the way you think about people and costs and some of that stuff that has been really helpful for you?
Yeah. I'll kind of go back to the beginning a little bit. I think there's a massive unfair advantage of like being self-taught, and you're not joking when it's like literally consuming and absorbing all the content on missions. That's literally what I did. I watched every single piece of content, looked at every single in a mission. Yeah. When I first started. And like was self-taught, went and like was being a media buyer as I was building Flux. Because that alone probably saved us $15,000 to $20,000 a month. By me being able to fill those roles. And again, like
mean in saved agency costs?
Yes. Yep.
That's before you talk about the wasted ad dollars from bad agency experiences and the lost time on growth. I just want to just shove. There's so many people who reach out about, can you look at my ad account? Can you do whatever? I'm just like, guys, I know it feels challenging, but like, you've got to get this knowledge yourself. It's too important for a growing D2C business. It's too important. Get the knowledge yourself. It matters too much.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends that are just starting out, and I'm at this point now where I'm like, where we've made it and we've seen it, I've kind of taken this path. I don't know if there's another way to do it in this challenge. Like, yes, if you're an influencer and like, but we're just talking about paid ads, and that's how like you're able to grow, and you don't have that unfair advantage of an influencer that's a partner or some organic ability to gain impressions. I frankly don't know how you do it. If you're going to be bootstrapped, if you're funded, I think that's a different story. But yeah, I think it's so challenging that anyone that's amazing, like you, Andrew, like it's a highly sought after skill set. And you're going to need to pay for that level of talent, and to make it through, especially as you're starting out, it's tough, man.
You're saying you kept the spend in house. Do you guys still manage your spend in house?
Yeah. We use David Herman is actually who we're partnered with.
Sure. Cool.
So we use him as a media buyer. So like,
Great. Yeah, but obviously you're going to be able to manage that relationship with a level of expertise. This is another thing that's underrated about this is when you've managed it yourself, you're much better at managing an agency partner.
Yes. And that kind of moving into that a little bit is like, frankly, that's what I kind of took it upon myself, is to know enough in operations and customer service in every aspect of the business to be dangerous, so that if you bring someone in, you're not waiting a year to like have it be materially impacting you, to be like, oh, something must be going wrong, versus you actually know a little bit what you're talking about, as well as hiring. If it's an employee and or an agency, do you know enough what you're talking about? What was really challenging, we launched Amazon 6 months ago. That's an area that I had not really been dangerous in at all. And trust me, I felt it. We failed at it. Same with wholesale. Like, again, this is hindsight's 2020, and thankfully I kind of trust my intuition. But the areas that I like heavily just sucked it up, grinded, figured it out, we were able to move very quickly and not have massive, again, and that's just going to hurt profitability in terms of speed, in terms of lost cost, and just bleeding in areas that you just wouldn't necessarily think of, versus like, what's your COGS? Like, this is a very big hidden expense. And so anyways, yeah, I couldn't agree more with that in terms of just like understanding agencies and how to manage them well. I know I'm not a massive agency fan, but, and even being, working at an agency, it's the people that are the X factor versus like the agency in oftentimes. But it's also equally important for the person to manage the agency well and understand and have accurate expectations. Because I felt that, I'd have CMOs coming in having these ridiculous expectations. I'm like, I'm not a magician. So it's both, and like, you can't hold someone to these unrealistic expectations, but you also need to hold them to something that like is attainable. And if they're not, like, they're not going to perform. This is a really important thing that I'm learning, that if you're working with a freelancer or an agency and you've outgrown them, know that you are the one that is going to have to come to the table to move on. They're not going to fire themselves. They're not going to admit that, hey, I don't think like I'm the right person for this. That has just been the biggest thing. And thankfully I've had like really good conversations and been able to navigate that really well. Like, I just had a really interesting conversation, and he's like, yeah, I kind of like am okay with this. Like, I agree. Like, I don't think I can get you guys to the next level. And I'm over here freaking out, like, man, how is he going to react? And this but like, he would have just continued to do as best of job as he could, but he wasn't the guy to get you to get us to the next level. So I haven't ever heard that phrased or said. And I think that's a really important thing, that you need to own that relationship, whether it's not working out, whether like you're the problem, in some cases. But that's been massive in terms of, again, kind of tying that back into the profitability aspect. There's massive costs to like opportunity, where it's like and also a lot of these things take a long time. Influencer, paid media, you can't know if it's working in the first 30 days. Like, oftentimes it's 3, even 6 months, especially with influencer. It's 6 months at a minimum to know if like the program's working, if it's your if it's the agency, or if it's just your product that might not be working at this time and place. And I mean, that's cost. And then also, what could you have been doing in the last 3 to 6 months that you're spending with them? So that
opportunity cost, right? Yeah.
Opportunity cost. Yeah. Which has a direct impact on profitability in my point of view.
No question. Yeah, no question. Okay, we're getting really low on time, Isaac. I know we're actually a couple minutes over our recorded time. Thanks for staying on. I want to just make sure we hit any other big stuff. I have one specific question, which is that you've offshored most of your team. How conscious of a decision was that in your organizational structure? Was that like part of the strategy?
No, it's a nice to have. Frankly, Taylor, I forget who it was. I think it was maybe Taylor, talking about how like your video editor should be your highest paid employee.
Yeah, that was an old.
I frankly could not
classic
agree.
Taylor.
Yeah, I frankly could not agree more. Again, not literally, and there's a lot of flack for that. But no, like they're very good at what they do, and again, that like for the cost of the output, it's really nice. Um, but yeah, like we frankly found a video agency that like we really like, that we just have been able to like have their employees kind of transfer over to like an in-house role when they're ready to like move on from agency. So that's just kind of been an opportunity that we've been able to execute on. But um, also, I don't know a ton of like frankly onshore direct response editors, versus like I feel like there's a ton of like very very talented offshore video editors that are excellent in this area. So I'm not opposed to
To say
that.
nothing of the rest of your business.
Yeah.
I just think this is my experience with this offshoring. It's just like, I don't know. I just find really talented people when I do that. So it's just like, and it's like, it makes sense cost wise for us. Like, I mean, the way I always put it is like, part of the reasons if you offer a good wage overseas, you reach a higher end of the talent pool overseas, whereas you have to spend so much money to reach the high end of the talent pool in the US. And so it's just sort of like, assuming the talent pool exists at all, and there's some variation in skill overseas like there is in the US, you can reach the top end of the talent pool so much easier overseas than you can at the US and financially. And so you can get this really high talent while not killing your books, And so what you're describing is just, it fits every experience I have with offshore employees.
Yeah. And as I'm thinking about it, I know a lot of very large 9-figure brands, just kind of, snooping on LinkedIn. They have a lot of offshore video editors, on their team.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a really interesting dynamic, specifically for direct response video editors and maybe even creative strategists. But I think very specifically for video editors, it's an interesting opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. And the other question I had is just like, I mean, this is a conversation I feel like we go for a couple hours, but we're going to wrap it here. And while we do, I just want to make sure there's nothing I missed that you think has been like a really critical part of your success. So when you think about your guys' success, is there anything else that you've done where you're like, hey, this has been another really important part of this that we haven't gotten to yet?
Yeah. There's one last part. And again, I think we're potentially unique in this area. So like, I'd say this isn't always necessarily actionable for like maybe pre product market fit / like even at scaling. Paid media is this ability to offset your rising CAC, your paid CAC costs, and investment in organic / brand. I don't want to over like. I think brand is kind of a separate topic. And like, I think you need to be big before you really think about brand and like branded content, but organic. I think that's a really important lever, specifically for footwear. I think we're just a little bit, again, unfair advantage in this way. For footwear, it's a very natural product for people to recommend and share with their friends, similar to like baby products. We have a 2-year-old daughter, so my wife loves recommending products to other moms. So again, that's another industry. So for us, anyways, we've leveraged just organic and like seeding product and just having impressions, unmeasured impressions, just knowing we're gonna give a product to someone that we know is a great product. Hundreds of thousands of people love the product. So we naturally know they're going to talk about it, whether in person or on social, but there's impressions for a cost of the shoe that is just unmatched in CPM comparison to Meta. And that just, again, is this halo effect that has allowed us, and we're investing even more into it, especially with, I just feel like it's beating a dead horse of just rising ad costs, but there's other ways to mitigate that. But I think just from like a brand halo effect, that's something a lot of brands should be thinking about, of like, how do they seed? How do they think about this organic play? Because not just from impression perspective, like on the paid with the new Meta algorithm, like it's considering organic impressions as a metric for success within your paid ad. So I think like that's a really important aspect of how can you manage and balance not just paid ads and associated CAC costs to that, and utilizing your, just a cost of your COGS, your product, and trying to get awareness and potential virality of, like the Stanley
just with seeding
example.
and posts, you're saying basically.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's been
seeding
key.
good quality influencers in your space who fit your market and see the posts they get.
I think that's a time tested. Like I wish we could have a measurable, like this is the lift, this is the result, but an impression is an impression. And if you can get it at $2, whatever, like massively cheap, like how can that not be a win? Irregardless of how quality, if you want to call it that, of impression that it is, it's a win. So that I think is just something I'm thinking more and more about, especially as just more difficult it is to win on Meta, is like, how can you start thinking about it? And frankly, like it has an impact on the profitability in like a long tail perspective.
Yeah, I think the challenge for that for a lot of people is that between the COGS, the shipping, and then the time output involved, and then the fact that the reach on a lot of posts and it's just not that big, right? Like, for a lot of influencers, it's just they're not reaching that many people per post, and so they look at that and they go, okay, well, this is really expensive, really manual, and it's not going to be the mass awareness thing like Meta, where I can just blast that out to all these people. I think the mistake,
but Andrew, I think what's
maybe
important,
one way to frame this. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. What's important is that you're right, 100%. If you keep that in the silo of organic, but if you're able to also use that on the paid side within a paid
100%.
ad, actionable,
100%,
then you split that cost. So I couldn't agree more. And that's where I think like getting and thinking creatively is like, how can you use that somewhere else? What about on email? What about on your own organic, like whatever that is? And again, I'm not going to sit here and preach at y'all. Like footwear, we're really blessed in that. Like,
right, it fits with your brand.
Yeah, you're not going to be like, hey, this is deodorant that I use, So I know we're blessed, but like I think that's definitely a consideration of just thinking about it outside of paid. Like, how can you figure that out?
Well, but the thing I was going to say is like it's also a very long-term consideration. So you just talk about reusing the content, but it's also like one way I'd think about it is the CPM that an advertiser pays me to advertise my podcast is like insanely high, right? Yep. It's insanely high. It's crazy, but because my reach is not that big, but the reason they do it is because my reach is so tight. It is the only people listening to or watching this episode of this podcast are people trying to grow profitable D2C businesses. And so for certain advertisers who are trying to help operators do that, right? Like the ones that I've been mentioning in this show on the ad reads, and we've taken breaks for that, right? They are tightly focused on that buyer. And therefore like even though my reach isn't that big and it's a very manual process and we got to work out all these things, like it actually really works out great for my advertisers who advertise with me, because what they end up with is a really perfectly like tightly tuned audience. And I think doing that over time with the correct audience really pays off, right? So in your case, right, if you want to get runners who are serious enough about to have some sense of the right kind of shoe and the way that the toe box impacts their health, and the way their body functions, like getting your product to the right influencers for that, even if it's not a massive reach, but getting the person following the right influencer and then over time hitting them and then having your meta ad stack on top of that, it really adds up over time. And I think that's a really important point that you're making. Yeah. Isaac, go ahead. You finish your thought and then we'll wrap.
One last point to that, I think that's really important is like, so if we have a knit runner. Just think about a casual everyday shoe, right? Go to the gym, go to coffee, any use. We're launching a more performance runner and trainer. Our target audience and goal would be to have every CrossFit owner in America wear our shoes, right? And so like I think it can be, depending on your product, like I think there's two different mindsets. Like for you, Andrew, like I don't know what there's or the sponsors, there's maybe 5,000 of us, right? But for that they care about, that's in your audience. But like, so I think that that's another interesting dynamic also of thinking about your products. Like some are hyper focused, and like if that's the case, like that's our goal. Like I'll send 4,000 pairs of shoes to gym owners because like that is the exact demographic, and that's a little easier versus like we're just kind of shooting from the hip of for our knit. Like of course we have different segments. So yeah, like I think there's a lot of different strategies to your point of like how you can think about it from a seeding organic perspective. But yeah, it's tough. Like this wasn't something we were heavily invested in from day one. Again, we had the paid angle, but now it's almost like equal, if not a bigger impact, because we're integrating it. And I think that's a kind of a cheat code, is like, how can you utilize it in more ways to then decrease your upfront risk and cost? Then it becomes a lot less of a risk to like all you're talking about. Like it's hard, it's manual, it's expensive for COGS on some products. So
yeah, it makes perfect sense. Isaac, this has been a great conversation. Thanks so much for taking the time, for making this happen, and for dealing with my bad scheduling last week when I canceled on you. I appreciate it so much. You should follow Isaac and his journey. He's on LinkedIn. The exact link for that is in the show notes of this episode. So go check out Isaac Mertens. Buy yourself a pair of shoes that are better for your feet from Flux Footwear. While you're at it, we can chalk up the CAC of your time on this episode to however many shoes you sell. I don't know if you give people a URL or a discount code or something like that. Just figure it out. But yeah, thanks very much, Isaac. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Andrew.
All right. Excellent conversation in the second episode of my Profit Monsters series with Isaac Mertens. I loved this conversation. I hope you did too. Just actually an amazing story. Like that's just monster numbers that Flux is putting up. There's a whole bunch of reasons for it, and I'm glad we can get into it. Subscribe wherever you're watching or listening, because I've got more of these coming. Nate Lagos is coming soon, and a bunch more after that. I think this is going to be a really helpful series for a lot of people. Go back, listen to my episode, watch my episode with Ben Perkins, and hear a different story. Like I mentioned in this episode, somebody who took on a bunch of debt and had to get his way out of it. There's just a lot to learn from each of these different operators, and it's really great that they're on here being transparent. I'm really helped by it. Follow up with Isaac. He said you can DM him on LinkedIn if you want to hear more from him and hear what he's doing. So go for that. LinkedIn note. The LinkedIn URL is in the show notes for this episode, so go check that out. Subscribe to this podcast, but also to my newsletter by going to ajfgrowth.com. Drop your email address either in the footer or in the pop-up there. That'll get you access to that. And of course, you can reach out to me on X at Andrew J. Ferris. See everything I'm doing at ajfgrowth.com. If you want to reach out to me personally, you can do that at podcast@ajfgrowth.com. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching and listening. I'll talk to you next time.